Hello there, and welcome to my full review of Onimusha Warlords HD. From a conceptual point of view, it's quite interesting to delve into the birth of this franchise. It shares some distinctive beginnings that are almost akin to how Devil May Cry 1 was created. Capcom experimented with the blueprint they were given with the Resident Evil franchise. The goal was to create a spin-off named Sengoku Biohazard in 1997. The idea seemed so familiar with the giant estate filled to the brim with booby traps and demonic hellspawn that the player would go up against. Much of these proposed ideas carried over into the PlayStation 2 version of the game since the PS1 premise was scrapped and reconstructed 50% into the development cycle. With a new name while retaining key focal points throughout development, Sengoku Biohazard became Onimusha Warlords, along with a 2019 remaster, which is clearly Capcom's attempt at gauging the temperature in the room for this franchise, since the Sengoku period has got quite the revitalization in video games, especially with products like Nioh, Ghost of Tsushima, and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. The first question to ask about this remaster is a simple one. Did the updates that Capcom provided in this package add any quality to the game? Now, you won't get any newer costumes or skins like you did in the Resident Evil 1 remake. However, that being said, Capcom did allow the player to have an on-the-fly weapon swap, and the only caveat to that is that you have to remain perfectly still to do so, which is a neat little feature that cuts down on the time you'll spend in menus just slightly. I guess another thing to note is the increased graphical fidelity that does make things look a bit less muddy in comparison to the PS2 version. Don't be fooled like the guys at IGN. This is still a PS2 game through and through, so obviously it's not going to be up to snuff with the latest and greatest in graphics. Some of the pre-rendered backgrounds really didn't age well in this game, and it definitely shows on some surfaces not looking really detailed as the player does. Animations are crisp, and the performance is at a constant 60 FPS with no letterboxing upon initial viewing, so that is a positive for sure. I also enjoyed the fact that they added a scaling camera from Resident Evil 1 remake to see more of the screen alongside additional audio tracks and revamped text. Unfortunately, the positives of these updates come with negatives, because outside of the FMVs, it seems like you can't skip in-game cutscenes, which can be annoying for any completionists who already played the game trying to go for achievements and trophies. Also, developers just need to learn that if I already played the game and seen these scenes already, then I don't want to see them again, so make the skip option mandatory. There's also wasted opportunity by not allowing you to have the Genma Onimusha version unlockable in this package. It would be a nice incentive for players who wanted a deeper challenge with the retooled enemies and extra combat, unless there's some deep hidden scripture out there that's lost in the woods and the jungles by Microsoft, lying out there in the open with the emus and the chimps, that says that Genma Onimusha cannot be ported to other platforms. Then I can firmly say, what the hell, Capcom? Now, I won't rule out the possibility of these things being patched in the game later or re-released, but if Capcom takes the idea of giving fans the ultimate Onimusha package, then that has to be considered to some extent. The original game is just as good as it was during 2001, despite some minor problems with the elephant in the room, that being fixed camera angles. I already understand there will probably be a generational gap of people that are used to fixed camera and the people who really don't even play fixed camera games in 2019. They probably started with something else, but you have to adjust to what was made in the past. These were the technical limitations back then in 2001. If you play something from the past despite the technical trappings of the time that it was made, and you want to adjust and learn how that game functions and operates, then maybe things won't be so bad. Personally, for me, this style can be hit or miss, being attacked by things you can't see. But still, once you find out how the controls operate, you do get used to it rather quickly. It just takes time, and there are analog controls there to compensate as you navigate this linear yet sprawling space between the environments like the giant Japanese estate and woodland areas that keep this whole samurai aesthetic constant. Speaking of the samurai, your character is armed with an assortment of items to help him survive. It's a basic sword in the beginning, but once you explore more features within the game, you'll find orb fragments that give you elemental properties to crowd control your enemies. This ranges from an electrical and flame sword to a double-bladed naginata with the power of wind. There's a few special bonuses. Off the top of my head, I can think of Oni Spirits, where you have to play a mini game, and supposedly it's really annoying. There's also unlockable costumes. There's also playing a special bonus with the Dark Realm. The Dark Realm is interesting because it's an area that gives you the ultimate challenge in game. It's an arena style gauntlet filled with enemies. Once you beat all the levels and feel like a badass, you get the Bishamon sword, which is the best weapon in the game, bar none. There's also ranged attacks that you can do with the bow and arrow and the matchlock rifle. You can wound enemies from afar with that. There's also navigating. A lot of navigating in this game. It's filled to the brim with puzzles and things you need to solve, like lock boxes to progress further with the items you need. The game isn't too clear, however, on your objectives, so there's times where I got lost trying to figure my way around the estate, and the map really doesn't do a good job at showing you unexplored areas or places you need to go like Resident Evil does. Nitpicks aside, I was really engaged to become better at this game, even in the midst of the archaic mechanics. There's no doubt in my mind that Onimusha has an engaging learning curve if you want to participate with either upgrading your character, finding new things, and discovering how enemies work with the Isen attack. The Isen attack is probably one of the best mechanics in the game and so gratifying to learn. Just as an enemy attacks, you press the attack button and you hit him with a critical blow. Sometimes it can kill the enemy in one shot, so time your blows wisely. I really love that mechanic so much, you have no idea. If we're gonna backtrack right to the negative, we gotta mention Coyote. Coyote just sucks. I'm sorry, I don't like playing with this character. She is the secondary character of the game, and she's not fun to play with from a gameplay perspective. Why do I say that? It's because she lacks the depth that Samanosuke has. So she has no soul absorber. She uses your items, so if you use an item with her, then of course if you use a healing item and that's the only way she can heal, then Samanosuke won't have that item. Her move list is very limited. She does have a cool strafe move where she can get behind the opponent and slit their throat. I thought that was pretty cool, but her weapon is so weak. And you get the Sacred Blade, of course, that makes things a little bit more helpful in my opinion, but I don't think she's really that fun to play with. And I think if they would have gave her a soul bracelet like the characters could do in Onimusha 2, that would have helped her gameplay significantly. Yeah, she's a watered down ninja. I really didn't like her segments. They tried to introduce them to keep the pace going, and when they first introduce her, I think it's during the water puzzle, that's where things kind of already get annoying for first timers, because you're not going to figure out that puzzle immediately, but once you do solve it, it's pretty cool. I just wish she was better equipped for the job. I thought some of the boss fights were decent. Nothing too special outside of a few. They either range from being piss easy like fighting Marcellus the first time, or significantly challenging like fighting him the second time, and the Samanosuke clone was pretty damn hard my first time around. But once you know how to counter them strafe efficiently, then you really have something going with the boss fights there, and I think it's interesting to learn how they operate. The story is something you heard 10,000 times in video games before. Rescuing the princess in distress from an unknown evil who inhabits the estate. There's fleshed out tidbits in the Onimusha lore that really surfaces in this game. You know, you're going to want to read the files and everything and absorb a good sense of the character motivation, but it's pretty straightforward. A hero seeking justice and the bad guys pissing the hero off by taking his friends away. Any relevance of a very, very deep plot comes from the world building itself, which triumphs over the basic outline of Samanosuke's mission. In conclusion, Onimusha Warlords was the first good stepping stone into a cool Sengoku series. Many of the elements were great, and a few of them were sadly rough around the edges. I love the gameplay, lore, and the sense of discovery, but the second playable character, the lack of bonus content with Gemma that could have padded this 4-hour experience, and not being able to skip certain endgame cutscenes left a bit to be desired. Based on a buy, wait for sale, or pass on the game system, I would say this game is still worth buying and adding to your collection at the low price of $20. Unlike most overpriced remasters with a lack of content, Capcom knew not to go beyond the $20 due to the brief nature of the replay value. Yet this package is still highly enjoyable if you're a fan of fixed camera games, if you're a completionist, and if you have that itch to scratch for Sengoku like games. I give Onimusha Warlords a 7.9 out of 10.